Hello, TC Society. Welcome. This class is going to be sort of unique in that you don't have to stand or participate. The first part of this class is going to be video. I'm going to demonstrate four corners, very specific footwork, and some alternate application handwork. So in that, you can comfortably have a seat and observe. If you like to follow along, you're welcome to. For this part, the next part with the computer animation may be boring to watch while standing. So in any case, two parts. You can be seated during this portion if you like. Four corners is a nickname. The name for the Tai Chi, my Mandarin attempt, is右玉女穿梭. And this gets translated as fair lady working at the shuttle, jade lady working at the loom, delicate lady working at the weaving press, something like this. And it's coming from Chinese culture, so it's important that we understand that. And we'll see that more in the application than in the footwork. But this, the concept is that they would be working at a loom or a type of machine for weaving, and they would have a wooden type of shuttlecock that they would send the thread back and forth for a large something that they're weaving. So that said, let's actually look at, first we're going to look at the footwork, and we're going to look at it in two forms, using a small square, then a large square, and then later a more free-form style of approach. So with that, let's use the small square. That's why we have this marked on the floor here. I'm going to start in the center. In the third section, four corners starts coming from hook and parallel whip. And using the square, I'm going to subdivide the square in half and keep my other foot just outside of the square this way when I press. And if we take my feet, if we look, this is the same shape. So if I'm keeping my feet inside the square, my hips and my feet aligned to each corner. This is where four corners getting its name, the nickname for four corners, right?右玉女穿梭. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I step and I press. Now when I'm turning, since we're just doing the footwork right now, we're going to exclude the hands. When I'm turning, I'm going to subdivide this square in half. And when I subdivide this square, I can keep my foot inside the square. I can use this line here, or I can be outside the square. Outside with this foot placed here may be uncomfortable. So staying inside the square, when I turn, I subdivide here. This other foot is going to do one of two things. Either kobu, making a smaller square within the square, or similar to a kobu, lock your standing foot a T-step. It's like a kobu pushed forward just a little bit. And then from here, I'm going to unroll the right foot and step to the corner. And now I have the same square as when I started. So next, I'm going to step, bring my feet together, ankle level, try to keep this foot level. Don't let it tip. If you let it tip, just a few degrees, right? And don't rest on the ground. And then when you step to the corner, follow step, your other foot slides to the halfway mark. Turning 270 to the fourth corner. Split the square. T-step. I wore these white pants so that you could see more clearly, and then step to the corner. Now in the form, the next movement is called jubi, and we go into press. But while you're learning four corners, you can practice it continuously. So from this fourth corner, I can, just like the second to third, I avoid step follow step, split the square, T-step, square, avoid, make contact, advance, split, split, step. By the way, the stepping that I'm doing here right now is clinical. You can practice this type of stepping any way you like. If you like to, when you practice the form, practice more meditative, you don't have to step so featurelessly. You can step as such. Let's review the small square before we do the large square. So again, my feet using the sort of inside of this box that we've created here. And when I step, it's almost as if my feet are staying inside or just at the corners of this box. Let's examine large step. Large frame, big square, bigger step. And this is the way I prefer to do it, but it's less geometric, and we'll see that later on the computer. We have a hook, single whip. So from here, I'm stepping outside of the square. When I turn here, I still have a square shape. Coming down this side, going out this way. My foot may be angled in a few degrees, it still has a square. And some of you may recognize this shape from Bagua. In fact, nave for Bagua may be more deep, right? But for the Tai Chi, we're going to practice something. Let's go from the beginning. Hook, step, square, press, avoid, bigger step, turning, press, step. So in this example, you see, it's almost as if my feet are staying outside of the square. Always using the square as the foundation. Okay, and we'll look at how that travels, the square moves with our structure. All right, so let's talk about application. There is one more type of stepping, freestyle, which we'll get to in a minute. Maybe more important than the first two. Application for four corners is the most basic way that I teach it is, if you are familiar with Bagua, we have this type of posture here, leaning against horse, right? For the Tai Chi, the first posture goes through something that looks like leaning against horse. And I teach that as a very simple example. Imagine there's something that's closing and you want to catch it. There's something inside there, right? My teacher used to like to use examples of food because everybody in their mind could create their favorite example. So he would say, imagine you're at the store and there's a freezer and you see they have your favorite brand of ice cream or freezer pop in there, and your friend grabs one and the lid's going to slam down, and so you reach out to catch it. And you want the ice cream, so you use your other hand to support, and then you reach in to take it, right? Very, very simple example. But another example I like to use is the metal hood of an automobile. In fact, an older automobile where the hood is very large and very heavy. So it's not just a flimsy glass case at the convenience store with with the ice cream. Instead, it's heavy. So we catch, and then this hand is supporting and turning. Remember, in Tai Chi, every posture has this Chan Si turning of the forearm, right? The forearm is turning. And in this particular case, the elbow is also rotating. So earlier we had talked about the Chinese cultural reference to throwing the wooden, I refer to them as shuttlecocks. I'm not sure what they're called in Mandarin. But my teacher would say that the end result is that. But before that, this movement that comes up, the hands coming up this way, the fingers turning over and pressing out. Okay, so for those that have studied cloud hands, we have the hands coming facing in, facing up, facing out, facing down, and facing out again. This is very similar. The hands come up, they make a full loop, and then they press out. And the most basic, once again, so that you have some point of reference, is the one hand is vertical and the other hand is horizontal, right? One hand going this way, the other hand going this way. So when we start, we have right hand is horizontal, vertical. This next movement, the arms, we'll talk about. Now when I press, horizontal, vertical. By the way, that interim movement between the first corner and the second corner, the student should be familiar with something from the second section called sheer fei, which is diagonal flying, right? Which is this coiling movement. If I make my center line strong and turn it like a post and leave one end like a counterbalance and the other end like a lasso. The concept is when your opponent has a weapon, right? They have a spear, their arm is there, is that you can wrap around it. This is easier to demonstrate in a push hand situation, but when we're changing to this other side, remember we're looking before we lead. So when I turn here, I'm using this arm. If I can wrap the opponent's arm, weapon, their incoming offense, or they may still be at a distance, they may see me turning, I can use that to make contact as a sensor and engage, right, make connection to their structure. So that's what that opening arm is. So when we press, so here is, I want to be able to coil, to get underneath so that I can reach through. The same turning in this direction. This left hand is going to form a cone, like a grasp of sparrow's tail, but now we're using a much larger circle because the opponent has their offense here. So we're clearing our whole frame to get underneath, right? So the most basic application, the most basic handwork for each corner is this. You can think of the Tai Chi symbol, the yin and yang, the way the symbol comes up, turns in, goes back out. So the same, coming in, and then each side pressing through, yin yang. We have both sides making a paisley. Sometimes they'll be connected, sometimes they'll be offset. Why would it change its application? In the form, you can practice as you like, where you reach one particular posture and turn. Now, using even just the most basic, let's talk about power application. From this corner, when I step, I can use both of these hands and press, like I'm pushing a door closed, right? This way. Or, we said earlier, we're supporting something heavy and then we catch it with this side to support so we can reach through. Something more like this, a press. Instead of a push, we're going to support, press, this way. So now if I turn, when I get to here, I can push. Or when I get to here, press. A longer wave versus a shorter wave. Okay, so lastly, the main idea to take away from this is turning in an unusual direction. When we drive or when we go into public, we should try to be predictable. But when we are doing self-defense and somebody is approaching us, it's okay to be unusual. In fact, confusion, kung fu, confusion before enlightenment, right? So we want to do some kung fu. So we can make this turning backwards. You can make it into your own. You can take as many steps as you need. If you're a beginner or an expert, right, somewhere in between, you can modify this as you like. So from hook and whip, when I do this movement, I might get to this corner to press. So if I do it slowly, I'm leaping backwards to the corner and spinning my body. It's more bagua. So when I press here, turning this way, getting to that corner in a different fashion. So you can change it. If you have, by the way, what's the reason? We're going to review small square, large square, and the most basic application of it. But what's the reason to use small square? If you have injury, right? If you have balance issue, if you have age, or you have concern for balance issue. The smaller square, easier to do, just as valuable to practice. So I can make something very simple. Doesn't have to be a big step. I can practice slow, meditative, almost like standing, almost like walking, and still effective. Make it continuous. Okay, let's review. Small step. I'm cutting the square in halves. Step, step, press, step, press, step, step, press. Oh, we also said you can take as many steps as you need. Sometimes I like to make foot adjustments, and this is, if it wasn't confusing enough as it is, sometimes I make my stepping completely different. So when I step to this corner, if I know I'm traveling in that direction, I make my T-step, my T-shape from here. I still have the corner of a square. That way, this foot, this axis of where this foot is, I can spring up to 180 degrees on that line. So when I turn, I can turn right off of that foot. That's unusual. Let's review again. Small step, small square. As an exercise, we're going to continue back to the first square. Large step, large square. So from here, turn, press, turn, press. Continue. Okay, so the application, I would like to add a third section to this video. Perhaps in the future it will get updated, where we demonstrate with another person there, even with stick, how we can use four corners to benefit against this. As stated, the important thing, the most important thing, is the turning. In your effort to be precise, don't forget to balance that with the spirit of play, and also understanding what's actually happening will help you make good decisions. Using the Tai Chi principles, the square base, keeping my head top up, sinking my tailbone, breathing the right way. Okay, let's look at some computer animation and analyze even further the geometric stepping.
Okay, welcome TC Society. This is our continuation of the study of four corners. In this time, in this mode, we are looking at some computer animation, and let's actually just watch this play through. This is a motion capture recording. We're playing back in real time, so this is the speed it was recorded at. We will be able to adjust time, and we have a lot of things that we can look at. So let's just let this play. I'll narrate a little bit, starting from hook and parallel whip. Go to the first corner. Turning backwards, we step to the second corner. Turning forwards, we step to the third corner. And turning backwards, we step to the fourth corner. This animation contains Jubi, press, and push, which are the next two. So now that we've seen what it is, we can play through it at varying speeds. We can also look at some other things. This is in the previous video, there was a square taped to the floor, so this square, the inside of it sort of represents that shape. So we have our original base square, but also something else that we have here is we can turn on this shape, and what this is it's a piece of geometry that is connected to his hips here, and it points in the direction which they point. It's not directly connected to his feet, but you'll see that his feet do fall into the square shape. It gives us a general idea for which way he's pointing. And we're going to look at this in a couple of different ways. So in general, the first corner goes here, second corner going that direction, third corner goes here, and fourth corner goes in this direction. If we pulled up a compass, I used the terms north, south, east, and west. So the first corner goes northeast, second corner goes northwest, third corner goes southwest, and fourth corner goes southeast. And then the form travels east until it turns back to the north. So we can turn that off. And let's actually add one more thing. So this is, let's actually do this first. So if we just took a snapshot of each corner, we would end up with something that looks like this. Right? This is our square guide. So we're just taking a picture of that piece of geometry in each corner. This is, again, I started the video earlier talking about the small square. What I'm presenting here is small square stepping, so the form will be sort of constrained, but you get some idea about what's happening with that. Let's look at something else. If we take a freeze frame of time in each corner, so when he hits the corner, we'll create a duplicate. So this is what all four corners look like. If it's square, it's slightly turned, right? And the concept for this, for the martial art, is if you have multiple attackers, right? So the exercise to teach this basically is have people standing in four corners, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Which, when we're teaching online, we can't really do that. In real life, it would be something more akin to, you have somebody approaching from each corner or from each direction, and you're dealing with them accordingly. So that is the sort of shape that it makes after we have coming from the beginning. If we were to do things again very accurately, stepping in a very controlled way, we get something that looks like this. Alright, so let's turn that stuff off and let's look at something else. So this shows some angles here. The idea is, from our first corner, when we turn, if we look at this object here and we change it, we're turning backwards. So this square turns into this square, and those are the same squares as here. So one square turning into the other square, the shortest distance is actually 90 degrees. It would be easiest for us just to simply turn here 90 degrees. But instead, we're turning backwards 270 degrees. On the next one, we only turn 90 degrees. But then following that one again, we turn 270. So these red arrows indicate the turn length for each one. And again, the purpose, if we look at this arc, is instead of turning the direct short route here, turning from A to B, we take the long route, take the long way around. And that's this path, turning from one corner to the other. Okay, so then earlier in the video, we had also talked about doing a longer step. So let's watch this video. This is a more natural take for me, less sort of less constrained to the square. And let's just watch it play. See, again, it's playing in real time. This is the speed at which it was recorded. Larger step, turning backwards. Press second corner, turning to third corner. Press third, turning to fourth. Large step. Press, and then continuing on. GB, G, and I think that's where this animation stops. Okay, so let's look at the same thing. This also has a square, and this animation is a little different. It's not constrained to this. It's split between the hips and the feet. And I've also tried to change the scale to show this is a regular square. As we step larger, you see the scale also scales. The square also scales. So here, closing the step, turning, press, continuing east. So let's actually watch that again with the square running. From hook and whip, we step to the corner. We're going to step backwards 270 degrees to corner 2. We're going to turn 90 degrees, corner 3, and we're going to turn backwards 270 degrees, corner 4. And then the form travels due east, GB, press, push, on, etc. So let's take the square away and look at the same thing. Actually, let's leave the square up. Here we have a compass, and you'll see, even though the base shape is offset, we hit northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast, and then we travel east. So if we turn the compass off, and let's do the freeze frame thing we did earlier, where we can see the main shape of the form. So as we hit each corner, we should see a freeze frame of our character. So this looks quite different than the previous example. It's less of a perfect square. In fact, let's rewind and turn this on. This is our square guide, just like we saw in the previous one. And we can turn this off. These are all the corners that it's hitting while it's doing this one. So we see in this previous example, this is more geometric, it's more aligned. This one here, if we had four of our characters in the corners even, it may look something like this. Instead we have something here. And again, the same, we would have opponents standing. In application, this would be something more where we could turn this way to face this next incoming opponent, but we turn backwards. we looked at what this version would look like from the top. Angles, the same thing. If we turn on our square guide, you see these two gray squares are the same as these. Top two squares for this. Let's turn his square back on and we'll see we hit the first one and the second one. And again, this is the shorter distance between those two angles, 90 degrees. So when we get to here, it's faster to just turn this way, but instead we're turning backwards. So we take this long angle here. And of course, this particular piece of animation continues into the form, but if you're doing it as an exercise, you can go from the fourth corner. Here we see another take after the fourth corner, and then continue back to the first corner as opposed to continuing on in the form. Okay, one other benefit that we can get by looking at this is motion analysis. So in this particular animation, we're just seeing the motion. Again, this is being played back at the speed it was recorded. We see stepping to the first corner. Turning to the second corner, press. Step and press to the third corner. And turning to the fourth corner. This is Juby. And press. So one of the first things we can note here is we talk about keeping the spine upright. So if you watch this section here, it sort of goes outwards, and that should be vertical. You'll also see that the neck joint turning out here, turning in here, and then facing up here. If the spine was straight, that would be more accurate. This corner is better. But see here, you see this cone, this conical shape, like a vase? That should be vertical. So here, quite angled, more vertical through right here, and then angled again. And even if angled, should be straight. Here you can see the neck is bent that way. So what is the purpose of all these videos, all of this stuff? We are working on some tools for teaching Tai Chi in augmented reality and in virtual reality, so that you can be in the scene with these characters and move around. We are working on our website, is work in progress, and if you don't have the names of the forms, you can get them on our website. This is all in HTML now, by the way, so you don't need a PDF file or PDF viewer. You can copy these and look for the translations on Google Translate for an interesting look at how we translate, how these were translated by TC. And I'm also looking at making some of these available, some of these tools, these 3D tools available directly online. So without a VR or AR viewer needed, you can just simply from any browser be able to look at these in 3D, see the motion, get guides, and yeah, so we hope to expand more into this territory, make some of these teaching tools available to everybody. That's it for now.